and subsequently act on it. But one of the things that's beginning to occur, and one of the things that I've been working on indeed across Tennessee as an experiment, is to actually be able to identify through a piece of technology, and we'll be announcing this here very shortly, but it is one vehicle, one way in which we can begin to change this multi-election cycle memory I spoke about. And that is that by creating a on-demand technology, a collaborative environment by which we can institutionalize all actions against any particular voter in any state, county, or local election, will allow us to maintain, through a, if you will, customer relationship management capability, all of the actions that took place during that election cycle. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, what I'm doing is going to be transactionalizing through the internet, the use of the web, a tool set by which we can, in the state of Tennessee, bring all 6.5 million voters online and be able to distribute those to the local city, county, or various groups that are running for office and or supporting various candidates. In our case, it'll be about 186 different Tea Party leaders throughout the state of Tennessee. Now, when you ramp that up to a nationwide capability, what this begins to do is it allows these third-party organizations, the 912 groups, other patriot groups, the Tea Parties, to begin to maintain a set of data and the content related to those voters across those cycles without giving up ownership to a Democrat Party or to a Republican Party or to an independent. More importantly, what it does is it allows you to see the learning that occurs even in a loss. In the case of Tennessee, we had 3 gubernatorial candidates. Ron Ramsey is our current lieutenant governor, who many of the Tea Party leaders supported. I, in fact, through my PAC here in Tennessee and Memphis, sent out 40,000 mailings to compare the 3 gubernatorial candidates, and subsequently got a lot of vote out, but not enough to overcome the machine politics that existed. Nonetheless, we learned a lot about what we did. We learned about who we talked to, how we spoke to them, what elements of our campaign worked well, what didn't work well, and what we can do next time to ensure that we are seen as a viable capability in brokering, if you will, various voter relationships to a particular candidate. Subsequent to that, to give you the import of this, subsequent to this campaign, we met with the winner, the gubernatorial candidate now, Bill Hassel, who's running for governor here in Tennessee, and we are going to work to hold him accountable, but at the same time support him in his November election. Now, all of this taking place gives us the sense that what we're doing as an organization, as an activist organization, in my case, the Memphis Tea Party and the associated Tea Party leaders of Tennessee, is that we can begin to formulate an approach to ensure that every time we touch a voter, every time we touch a candidate, every time we raise a dollar, that we can provide the associated transaction over the web to the various known constituents. Those constituents are the leadership, their volunteers, candidates themselves. But more importantly, as an activist group, we can own the information content ourselves. In other words, it won't be owned by the Republican Party, it won't be owned by the Democrat Party, it'll be owned by the activist group. And in that sense, we can maintain continuity across multiple elections, across multiple candidates, indeed across multiple leaders. We know in a volunteer organization, like many that we see in the roughly 5,000 to 8,000 across the country, that leadership changes. Sometimes family life intrudes, sometimes jobs intrude, sometimes we just get tired and a new leader steps up. In the context of the current events that we see within the activism itself, we lose visibility to what took place in that preceding leadership organization, or oftentimes what took place in a preceding election. And make no mistake about it, while I enjoy the rallies and I enjoy the meetings and I enjoy getting out with other colleagues who are interested in this country and taking back our rights under our Constitution, it is at the end of the day getting someone elected who will represent those values and indeed hold them accountable to subsequent election cycles. We see groups like Human.org, we see other organizations, even Obama's force that has been created on the basis of essentially his mailing list, where they are able to very effectively communicate. Our challenge has been, frankly, in this movement, is that we tend to isolate our relationships one to another. There is almost a sensitivity that if we aren't so localized, that if we should collaborate with somebody else, that somehow we might be co-opting the movement. requirement that if we are to sustain the various efforts that are ongoing across this country, that we need to think about how we can technologically enable that, while at the same time providing a capability that ensures this institutional memory I spoke about. Now, we're doing that, and we'll be announcing this probably within the next 30 days, and we'll be holding a number of conference calls, and I would encourage those of you who are on this meeting today, that I'll certainly, through John, send out an invite. But we have actually put together and negotiated a piece of technology that I'll be able to go ahead and distribute on a monthly service fee to anyone who's interested in using the technology. Basically, for the cost of about $30 a month, your organization, your leadership will be able to maintain all the content around your voters, have all the information, even raise money on your organization's behalf and or your candidate's behalf, to be able to go ahead and ensure that we understand what's going on within candidates, within the voters, and within issues that are interesting to us. Now, why is this baseline important? Because if we institutionalize that content around the voters, if we recognize what's going on throughout issues, whether we're trying to get people to show up at a governor's office or a senator's office or a congressman's office or a local office for an issue, perhaps dealing with elements of a regulation. As we're sitting today, we're seeing in the Second Amendment fight that's going on right now, the EPA, for instance, is beginning to fashion or craft regulation that would eliminate lead in bullets and in fact things as obvious as a fishing lure. The rationale there, of course, is they'll be able to control and essentially backdoor the Second Amendment. Now, if you're not part of the NRA, if you're not part of some other group, well, the problem with that is put out these notices and put out these efforts to you on particular issues are general in their approach because they have to be. If we can provide a localized leadership and use this element of localism in this activist movement that we see today about us, then we can actually change the dynamic, because we're no longer talking from some guy at the NRA headquarters or from some guy in Washington. We're now speaking about a local leader in Memphis, in Nashville, in Knoxville, in certainly Colorado Springs, or wherever, talking to people that are down the street or down the block or in fact within the same city or county that they're familiar with. And in that sense, we can not only customize the message, but we can animate certain behaviors that are much more localized. What does this take? Well, the technology I'm talking about and why this is such an important element is because we can do things like surveys, statistically valid surveys, and identify issues that are hot buttons. We can begin to actually allocate information relative to the voters' interests. They like to focus on school board issues, PTA, perhaps Second Amendment rights, etc., etc. Today, we don't know that. Today, if you pull down the voter logs from our relative county elections commission, what do we get? We get that you voted in a primary, we got that you voted in a general, probably a presidential election, and that's about it. We know your name and address. We don't have your email typically. We don't have your cell phone more often. But generally, that's about the extent of the information that's related to that voter. The unique element here in the strategy of moving towards this multi-election cycle approach is that we can begin to sustain the interest not only of leadership, but also bring that together with the interest of the voters. And by bringing the localized leadership together with the localized voter relationships, we can begin to get the vote out more aggressively. We can begin to talk to voters in ways that the national organizations are incapable of, and ultimately we can begin to create change where it does not exist today. Now, a lot of you are doing many different